Hello everybody. In this video, I want to do something different. Instead of teaching some topic, this time I want to go and see what the big uh, news in AI, the ChatGPT from OpenAI is doing, right? Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's saying that it is going to put so many people out of business. And I wondered, well, can it do it to us educators, right? Can it really do a complete change and transformation in higher education? And I wanted to be really without bias, and that's why I gave it all sorts of different problems in engineering, and I wanted to see how it performs. So let's have some fun together. Let's go ahead and take a look at this ChatGPT. So here I made my account, logged in, and the first question I answered it is, how is ChatGPT trained? And the important part is here that if you go under number 3, that is kind of revealing what it is. It says it's a neural network that is highly effective for processing sequential data like language. The model learns to predict the next word of sequence of words in a given context based on the preceding words, right? That is very revealing about this. So basically, when you give it a question, this is the preceding word, and if whatever comes after these words is really an answer to that question, then it is going to give that to you as the answer. So when is it that it can give you a relevant answer? Is first of all, it should have seen something like the sequence that you have asked, like your question. And second of all, whatever comes after that sequence, that question, should be a relevant answer. Not everything on these websites that you go and ask your questions like Stack Overflow, Reddit, Quora, and so on, immediately somebody comes and gives you a very good relative answer. Okay, so this is how this guy is trained. It's a sequence. Okay, so to experiment with that, I have given it different types of questions, from basic questions like asking it, hey, for example, why is not 3D printing not appropriate for large scale manufacturing, which actually it gives me a bunch of relatively good answers. To why, to now going a little bit into dynamics, why does a rolling ball stop on a flat surface, right? And then it talks about rolling resistance, which is exactly what I was looking for, and air resistance, and then the imperfections in the surface and so on, right? Some of the stuff it says is not relevant, like conservation of energy. Actually, that's the reason I'm asking this question. It doesn't violate anything in conservation of energy if you don't consider rolling resistance and air drag. So, but overall, if you look, it gives you a bunch of relative things. So as long as it comes to answering general questions that is describing something and so on, I assume it has seen enough of material on different websites that it can give you something that will be useful to you. Now, when it comes to programming, and I ask it for some MATLAB code, again, there are lots of websites and lots of data out there for most of the trivial tasks and basic tasks. So if you ask it, hey, write a code for me that gives you factorial of a number using a loop, you see it does it very, very well, because in one of the websites, it has seen the question that calculate the factorial of a number in MATLAB, and then right after that, somebody wrote this code, and now it is exactly copy and paste that for you. So it's basically doing a search here. Okay, no big deal. And then I raise the bar here and say, okay, now show me some persistent variable. And again, I know I have this code because I have this code exactly in the textbook that I'm using. Okay, this code is exactly in the textbook that I have by Chapman. So it's no surprise if it could find something like this and give me that example. No big deal. So then I raise the bar for MATLAB code and see if it can go further. Is there a way that it can go? And in the middle, I even changed the language. I say, give me a pack language, which is used for training Denso robots. And actually, it could give me the basic command that I wanted, because this is one of the things I do for my robotics lab, the move L command, and it knows it. Again, it's interesting that it's not really limited to something like MATLAB or Python. It can give you a good search, right? It can give you a good search. And then I bumped up the thing. I said, for example, find the minimum of some function for me using another specific function. So here I'm working with functions of functions, right? And anonymous functions, and it did work actually very well, as you can see here. No worries. So ask it to give me the plot of a helix with a specific radius and height. It did it perfectly. Again, I assume these data are what? Trivial available. So now what did I do? I raised the bar a little bit and tried to mess up with it. I said, okay, find the angle of the pendulum for me, a nonlinear pendulum with a given length from some initial conditions, right? And then what did it do? Immediately it gave me the equation, which is freely available on most of the websites, and then it wrote me a MATLAB code to what? To numerically simulate it. Then I tried to be really mean to it. I said, no, I want an analytical solution because I know there is no analytic solution to this problem. I wanted to see if it gives me the answer, hey, there is no analytic solution. And actually it did. It did very well. It says this guy does not have closed form solution. Then I said, for example, I gave it like a 3 by 2 matrix, say calculate the determinant, right? And I said, why is this code giving me an error? And it says, well, because it's not a square matrix. So it's not necessary that it has seen this specific matrix. It's important that it knows that for determinants, your matrix has to be square, and this guy is not a square. And it says it has 3 rows and 2 columns. And this matrix specifically, and that command specifically, might not be available in any website because you can change those numbers and the size of the matrix arbitrarily. And so it has learned more than just copy and paste. It's not just like that. It has learned something about the determinant command, and it knows this guy has 3 rows and 2 columns. So it learned deeper than that, okay? You can see that it gives me an answer beautifully, right? Or I say, for example, if this is a vector -1 and 2 and log of x, why does this one give me an error? And it said, because you are trying to get the log of a negative number. So you see, it knows about log. It knows that there is a negative number here. So the learning is deeper than that. One time I gave it, said, calculate the radius of curvature for this function at this x. And it gave me a MATLAB code for it to calculate it numerically. Then I said, no, you know what? I did it the second time. And I said, well, I want you to do it at arbitrary x. And then here it gave me MATLAB symbolic, and I tried to be even meaner. I said, no, I don't want your MATLAB code. Give me the algebra. I mean, don't expect me to write the code and get the answer. You show me the answer. And it did. Look, here it has the function. It took derivative. It took second derivative, plugged them into the radius of curvature and say, here, just plug in the x val and you get the number. And the reason I did this is because I found that it's not doing necessarily very good when it comes to algebra. How did I know that? Here, I gave you the simple trigonometry equation. I said sine of x plus 2 cosine of x equals 2. Solve that for x. And it tried, really. It said, hey, keep sine of x on one side, take that 2 cosine to the other side, square both sides, and then solve for the quadratic equation in terms of cosine of x. But the thing that it didn't do is it brought this 2 to this side, not the 2 cosine to the other side. So clearly here, whoever wrote the answer afterwards in the website that they solved something like this, they did not do the algebra properly. So you see that when it continued, right? When it continued, it came down to this equation, which has no real roots for cosine of x. The roots are based on the square root of -44, which is wrong. Okay, so it did a little bit of mistake in the algebra, right? If you solve this equation and get the equation in terms of cosine of x, the roots are, one of them is 0 degrees, the other one is cosine inverse of 3/5. And obviously you can see that if you plug in x of 0 here, the sine is 0, the 2 cosine is 2. So an obvious answer is x equals 0. And it did make a mistake in the algebra here, and it turns out that it says, hey, there is no solution here. So when I saw that, I said, there we go. I got one part that you are not doing your job right, algebra. So now I try to see if it can do the algebra right for this radius of curvature, and it did. So it's not necessarily that it doesn't make a mistake every time it does algebra, but when it comes to algebra, there is a higher chance. When it comes to plugging formulas and doing algebra, there is a higher chance of mistakes than when you are doing some simple code or you're asking it for some simple essays or something like that. Okay, so it's the level of depth of the problem. The other interesting thing I did with MATLAB, I asked for a Simulink. I say, hey, give me a Simulink file, right, that creates or simulates the motion of a nonlinear pendulum. And it tried to create that Simulink using commands in MATLAB by creating a MATLAB file, adding blocks, using set parameter commands. So doing everything basically from the command window instead of, which it doesn't have the data for it, opening up Simulink and show me a video of that. Okay, so it's gonna show you text. It's not gonna show you a training video on such a thing. And I guess if they had something like that, that would be nice, but they probably have to get it from other people. And here comes the problem of copyright and something, right? If they go to my website and show from my YouTube videos, the video I have where I solve this problem and say, hey, this is a video how to do it, probably I come back and say, hey, OpenAI, your software is using my video, now what about my money? So they don't want that. They want to add some generative basic code, right? Some general code, I'm sorry, that does it without referring to anybody. And I copied and pasted this code into MATLAB command window, and I tried to run the code and I got an error. So it is not going to give me exactly what I want, but it was interesting. It created this Simulink file. It added a few blocks for me, the trigonometry block, the gain, the addition, the multiplication, and so on, which are not really bad. I really don't need a multiplication. But you see, I guess in terms of Simulink, I assume soon enough in the future, it might be able to get you some Simulink files, okay? Not right now. I asked it several times to regenerate the response. And it gave me all sorts of different answers that it got from different websites. I ran all of those codes, and none of them could give me the right answer. So in terms of Simulink, I can definitely tell you that it is not doing an amazing job. Then I started looking at other courses, other topics, see what it can do. And I asked it, hey, can you solve dynamics problems? And say, yeah, I can certainly help. But it gives you a disclaimer that, well, guess what? I'm not going to replace in-depth assistance of something, right? Okay. And more advanced problems may require a specific expertise and so on. So I said, well, let me give you one of my homework problems in the dynamics class. Let's see what you do on it. So here is that problem that a boat has an initial velocity of 10 meters per second. Due to drag, it gets an acceleration a equal -0.05 v squared. You want to find the velocity of the boat 4 seconds after the start of this acceleration. And it started it relatively nicely. You see, it could rephrase my information. And then it wrote, it tried to integrate a, which was -0.05 v squared, but the problem it did, it integrated both sides versus time. And the problem is this integral of a dt is v, but this side you cannot integrate because your variable is v and you're integrating versus time, not versus velocity. And then what did it do? Look at here. This is the part that was problematic. It changed this integral of v squared dt. It changed it to v squared dv. So arbitrarily, it changed time into velocity, found the integral, and then solved everything with plugged in the initial condition, found the constant of the integration, and the final answer it came down to is the final velocity is 10, which is the same as the initial velocity. So basically, although I had some deceleration and it lasted for 4 seconds, the velocity did not change. You see? It cannot do a common sense testing. It says, hey, I was going at 10, I applied a brake, I'm still going at 10 after 4 seconds. Should I slow down or not? You see, it cannot do that. Of course it cannot. It's not going to replace your common sense and basic knowledge. And the reason for that, again, as I said, is because it replaced a t with a v. So here you know how to do this with some basic separation of variables, and the velocity that you'll find is going to be 3.33 meters, 1/10 over 3, not 10. It definitely has to be smaller than 10. Okay, so it failed that. Then I said, well, let's go to controls. Let's give it the controls question. And I gave it a transfer function, a closed loop transfer function, a input of a unit step function, and I said, what is the steady state error of this system? And here it gave me some simple simplified formula, which is not necessarily correct. It says the steady state error is the limit as s goes to 0 of sgs. That's not correct. This should be es, the error in the Laplace domain, not the transfer function. And so when it applied that, okay, clearly it found a 0 steady state error, which is wrong, as you know from controls. The steady state error is the limit of SES. For E, you apply U minus Y, input minus output. You factor out U, so then the ratio of Y over U is your GS. So in this case, it's a step function. Your US is 1 over S. If you plug in everything, it's going to be 1 minus G at 0, which in this case, for this function, which is S plus 1 over S squared plus 3S plus 4, it's going to be 1 over what? 4. So it's going to be 1 minus 1 over 4, which is what? 3 over 4. This is your steady state error, not 0. So you see here, it got this part wrong. And again, this probably comes from some source that did not have right formula. So the fact that it gets this data from all different sources and there is no filtering system to kind of filter it down to, hey, these websites are peer-reviewed, the formulas in them, the equations in them are reliable, you can trust it and use it. And some of these websites, just everybody came and put a comment there and put a formula there that is not necessarily correct, right? That is a source of problems. Sometimes you see some formulas are there that should not be there. Let me show you one more case of algebra, right, or general knowledge. So here I said, if I give you semi-minor and semi-major diameters of an ellipse 1 and 2, what is the exact circumference? And then it went and it found this approximation. And although it was an approximation, it says the exact circumference is this number, which is clearly wrong. You know, there is no exact formula, closed form, for circumference of an ellipse. It does not exist. Everything is an approximation as long as they are a limited number of terms, not infinite number of terms. They are all approximations. So here it is replacing an approximated formula for me with the word exact circumference. So it can easily, it can easily give you an error. I went to robotics and then I started asking it some questions. Drive me the forward kinematics equations for a planar 3 degree of freedom robotic arm. And actually it did it. Okay, and to make it worse for it, said, okay, now but what about inverse kinematics equations? can you do that? And guess what? It did it. And again, because these informations are freely available in many websites, I even went to a 3DOF inverse kinematics and still could do it, right? So no problem. It was really amazing until I said now in a 3DOF planar arm, if I give you the position and the orientation of the end effector, how many different solutions can you give me for inverse kinematics problem? And the answer is one. But you see here, it goes on a rant and tries to give me all sorts of things that it found from here and there, but it does not give me the answer that the answer is one. It says, hey, yeah, it can have multiple solutions and it depends, but it doesn't say, yeah, for this specific scenario that you're talking about, it's just one solution, not what? Not basically several solutions or something, right? So you see, it just talks in general and cannot really apply it to a specific problem that you are looking at. And the reason is this problem is not necessarily in any website. And this is one of those problems I made for my robotics homeworks assignments. So you see, when it comes to this, absolutely cannot do it. One last area that I experimented with it today was drawing. Could you do any drawing for me? And of course, I did not expect it to do it for me, but I just wanted to see. So I said, could you give me the front view of a cone with a radius of 1 meter and height of 0.6? And then it directly gave me a MATLAB code for it, which is probably available. And then I said, no, I want a technical drawing, not a MATLAB code. And then it kind of gave me this, right? I wanted it to give me the angle and so on, which couldn't do it, right? And you see here, it's kind of giving you something that is not really a technical drawing, of course. And then I says, hey, I said, do you know CAD? So yeah, I'm familiar with CAD. I said, okay, can you draw something for me in SolidWorks then? So yeah, if you want to draw something, right, a simple rectangular block, then do blah, blah, blah in SolidWorks. Yes, I was aware that it cannot now go ahead and open SolidWorks or any other CAD software and give me something, right? It's not going to show me any training video on that and so on. But I just wanted to know how far I can go with that and basically have a little bit fun with the software. Now, the last question I asked it was, will higher education be replaced by artificial intelligence? And it admits that it's not possible. It says that although it can add and augment stuff to higher education, it's not going to do that, and it's unlikely to do it in foreseeable future because of several things that higher education does. The human-centric skills, okay, which is not just acquisition of knowledge, but development of critical thinking, creativity, communication skills, and other cognitive skills, personalized learning, social interaction, ethical consideration, and so on. So it admits that it is not going to replace higher education, it is not going to replace educators, but it can basically come as an extra tool, extra device, just the same way that calculators came and computers came to help us save our time on some task that now we call trivial. So maybe this one is an augmentation to the education, not a replacement. Okay, so now let's get to the final word. So now you are a student in higher education and you see that it has a bunch of capabilities, this OpenChat or OpenAI ChatGPT or other software that exists in AI domain these days. And there are also all sorts of other websites that like Chegg and so on that provide all sorts of things. Actually for Chegg, I would call it a cheating method. And then you might say, well, do I really need to attend any physical class? Do I need to go to Dr. X or Professor Y's programming class or CAD class or dynamics class or anything for that matter? does it really have to happen? Or because whatever they give me as homework or quiz or something, I can get some solution most of the time correct out of these websites and these applications and tools. And if I get out of here and go to work, then they would probably give me some task and I have to write some code for something or do some simulations and so on. And though in those places also I can have these tools and get my job done. So why do I need to attend the class? Why do I need to learn the concepts in details? And the important answer is actually exactly the opposite of what you think. The existence of all of this makes attending classes, makes learning. A couple of decades ago, you could retire being a professor in a university or college if you could teach one or two courses, right? And it would be awesome because not too many people know them and knew how to teach them. And then for industry, for example, after let's say a little bit more advance in programming and so on, and the appearance of new programming languages and so on, if you wanted to go and work for some industry, you would be hired against somebody that knew one languages. If you knew 4 or 5 languages, you would be hired, right? That was a competition edge that you had against that person. Now you are competing against machines. And machines, in that aspect of learning the syntax and basics of many of these programming languages and so on, they might pass you, they might overtake you soon. Okay, so that's not enough. If you are going to a fight against a machine, you have to know the shortcomings, you have to know the Achilles heels, right? And what is it? That's that innovation. That's applying a concept to some topic, and more important, developing that concept and improving on it. That's coming up with a new method, coming up with some new things, new algorithms. The day that the machines can devise algorithms, the day that you can ask ChatGPT to give you an algorithm that beats the state of the art robot navigation for indoor environment under some uncertainty conditions, that day, yes, we are doomed. We are literally going to be completely replaced by the machines. But I don't think that is going to come anytime soon with the robots we have these days and with the AI that we have these days. Okay, and always remember that if OpenAI and other software and other machines like that can do these jobs for these companies, and your only capability is to do a similar thing, punching some commands or questions and getting some answers, why would they hire you for a 6-digit salary while they can just do it for OpenAI for free or for a small monthly subscription? So in the future, in the very, very near future, I'm not talking about 3, 4 decades from now, probably in this decade, the competition in the job market is for those who know and they learned how to learn. They learn how to get new knowledge fast, how to apply it to the problems that have not been solved, that have not been tackled. Okay, they are innovative people. They are the people that are willing to take risks and so on. Those are not something that the machine has entered. Those are the domains so far inaccessible by the machines. So, and guess who can make such innovations and contributions? Those people who know the topics in details and in depth. If you know something superficial because you just been to class once in a while and you use all sorts of cheating devices and OpenAI and so on, OpenAI is not really, I'm not comparing it against something like Cheat. But if you, that's the way you earn your grade and you didn't learn anything beyond that, then I would say the companies will hire a software, not hire you to do the job. So my recommendation is uh, it's a good thing. It's good to take a look at it, to play with it, something, right? But okay, thank you so much for your attention, and I will see you in my next video. Thank you.